our story is going to be a little bit different. Our presentation is a little bit different to what a lot of other people, but sort of follows on from a lot of what Sandra was just talking about then. Obviously, our boy, I'll take you back 9 years ago, our boy was born. During his birth, went through quite a few birth difficulties, and was born with an emergency cesarean. Claire's placenta actually ruptured well in the early stages of labour, but wasn't picked up till later. But he was born and he was quite healthy and he presented quite well once he was born. And it wasn't until he was about 6 months old we started noticing that he wasn't reaching milestones. Didn't like tummy time, and his left arm had dropped down, and he'd ignore his left arm a little bit. We thought he might have injured his shoulder or had some sort of physical injury. From that, we went to the doctor, got our referral to our paediatrician, and after a series of tests, including MRI, we got the diagnosis that he had spastic triplegic cerebral palsy. Devastating as a parent, and as all parents on this symposium would know. We had no idea what cerebral palsy was. What did it mean? How can we fix it? How do we move forward with cerebral palsy? How is it going to affect his professional football career in the future, etc.? And we didn't know enough about what cerebral palsy was. So we actually did a lot of research. The initial prognosis wasn't good. He wasn't going to be able to walk. Speaking probably would have been a problem, and learning difficulties, etc. But we went through our normal grieving process as parents do. We were angry at the hospital for not being able to pick up these sorts of things during birth, angry at ourselves for not speaking up. But you go through that process, and obviously that takes a bit of time, and then you get to the point where instead of concentrating on the negative energy, started thinking about all the positive things, the things that he could do. And one of the other speakers was speaking before and talking about not focusing on the can't do's, but focusing on the can do's. And that made it really, really positive for us. We started reading all about neuroplasticity, the brain that changes itself. Obviously, it's a very famous book. Yeah. You go through that and you learn and read and follow up as much as you possibly can. One thing that really stood out in everything we read was physical therapies. Physical therapies can improve motor function. So that's something that we really concentrated on. Max did his first intensive therapy at Monash Hospital, which was constraint therapy. And obviously you go and have one meeting there, and then it was all your therapy was done at home. We were told that an hour a day is great, an hour a day is good, but 3 hours is better. So we made sure we did 3 hours. We worked it out, and we put a roster on the fridge, and we made sure that we took the time and put in the effort that we both did our part to try to make sure we did the 3 hours a day of therapy.
I think at that stage we actually sort of brought out Toy World with all the different games and set up his gym at home and his little mini treadmill and mini exercise bike, and we had the whole house decked out specifically. We
did, and we became physiotherapists ourselves, learning from our therapists and our occupational therapists and our EPs. But it didn't stop there. We obviously went through and we did physio and OT at the hospital. We spent our own money on private physio and OT. We did hippotherapy, which we did down here at the Mornings Peninsula. We did yoga, kinesiology. We did kinesiology with 3 different therapists. Aquatherapy was one that we really enjoyed. We did a lot of aquatherapy. Biomanual therapy. We did astronaut training protocol, which works on the vestibular system with flashing lights and spinning boards, and we tried absolutely everything. Vibration therapy, as Deb was talking about earlier. A Niagara therapy was something we did early, and obviously power plate, which we still use today, before and after some of these therapy sessions. But it didn't stop there. We obviously recently Piastum, which I'll go into a bit later on, but TheraSuit therapy was one that really stood out for us. It was one that Claire, our therapist, which came into Max's life at 18 months old, Zoe, she was very good at connecting with Max. As he got older, it was harder and harder us being therapists at home. He wasn't interested, couldn't engage, we were parents trying to discipline a child at the same time trying to teach them therapy, and you lose that connection, that loving connection, trying to be a therapist at the same time. And we found that just doesn't work. And we know that that's early childhood intervention best practices is therapy involved, integrated into your natural environment and your home and learning. It's good to a point, but
to a certain age.
To a certain age, yeah. And we found that it got to that point where we weren't happy with being therapists. So we threw it into the hands of our therapists and started engaging in intensive therapies. When intensive therapies was introduced to us in the TheraSuit method, I wasn't quite sure. Claire explained and discussed what the therapy we were going to do, this intensive therapy, and I wasn't sure that I was happy that Max was going to be doing that much therapy. But we signed up for the first session and we went and did the first block of therapy. Now that's 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks. And that's your intensive block. And then followed by maintenance therapy after that, which is an hour a week. So an hour of OT, an hour of physio in separate blocks. But that intensive block, at the end of that intensive block, we saw some amazing results that we became advocates of intensive therapies. I'm not advocating for TheraSuit therapy. I'm just saying physical therapies are brilliant
as a whole.
But to making therapies work, there's 3 things that I see that have to really work, and these have to be worked out, and they're going to be different for all kids. 1, you've got to have your therapy. 2, you've got to have the dosage right. There's no point in doing half an hour of OT and losing it. You've got to have the dosage right. And the 3rd thing, which makes up the massive triangle, which is the therapy, the dosage, and then the therapist. You've got to have a therapist that can understand and engage with the patient and have that perfect connection. Max does intensive therapies now, and even at the end of it, he's, it's not over, is it? And he wants to keep going on and doing some of the things that he's just picked up. He sets his own goals now. But going back, we're advocating so much for intensive therapies, but it is expensive. Therapies aren't cheap. Therapists aren't free. And we heard about this new National Disability Insurance scheme that was just about to be rolled out. So we went down to our local Member of Parliament and we had a discussion about intensive therapies and what sort of therapy is going to be involved in a child's National Disability NDIS program. How are they going to fund that? That's your physical intervention. Your financial supports. Yeah. So we heard that it wasn't going to be included. There's no such thing as intensive therapies. It's not going to be included. There's only a certain amount of funding, and it was up to 50 hours a year for therapy involved in physical therapies for a child with physical disabilities, and we knew that it wasn't enough. Max was doing, our plan and our goal was to have 250 hours of therapy, and we knew that wasn't enough. We asked how we can get this involved, how we can get this included on the intensive therapy the NDIS program, and for that there needed to be a clinical trial done on intensive therapy or an intensive therapy program. So we went out and we spoke to therapists, researchers, other cerebral palsy agencies and foundations to see if we could get one funded, and we came to closed doors all along the way. One night we decided, well, we're going to have to run one ourselves. We wanted to do a like a pilot trial, yeah. And if we could prove that this intensive therapy worked between 10 and 15 kids, there might be enough that a research group might want to go further and do a proper controlled therapy or controlled research trial. So we went out to raise the funds. It was going to cost us $500,000 to conduct this trial for up to 15 kids. So we had the kids, we organised the therapists, but we needed to raise the funds. So we started the Max on a Mission Foundation. To raise some of the money for the Max on a Mission Foundation, I thought I had to do something pretty crazy. So I carried Max along the Kokoda track. Now, some of you from other countries probably don't know the Kokoda Track, but Kokoda Track is it's an old wartime trail across the country of New Guinea, from the north part of New Guinea down to the south. Now, it was part of the Japanese invasion in the Second World War. It's fairly arduous. It goes over 96 k's. I generated enough interest in there that we raised over $300,000 towards our trial by generating that awareness. But it wasn't enough. We still didn't have enough. So we went and spoke to our local federal member, who is the National Health Minister down here, our federal health minister. And he found the funds to fund the last part of our trial. We ran our trial. The hypothesis was, does intensive physical therapies improve the motor function of kids with physical disabilities? We had someone who became our really good friend, who is a professor at the Hudson Institute of Medical Research at the Ritchie Centre, who gathered all the data and he prepared the paper. And we wanted to use that paper to go forward and do a full clinical trial, but as it turned out, it didn't need to. We had enough evidence out of that trial that we actually lobbied the federal government to get intensive physical therapies put on the NDIS system. So now most kids in Australia that are on the NDIS system can access up to 250 hours of physical,
and even more,
and some even more, for physical therapies, which we were really impressed about. Obviously, going further, well, Max still does those therapies now today. Now he's got a bike. We modified a bike, and he learnt to ride this bike. Now, over a period of time since been doing these intensive therapies, we used to go for a short ride around this block, which is about 500 metres. Just recently, during the COVID, obviously going out and being able to go for walks as exercise, Max just recently rode 10 kilometres on his bike, with us jogging next to him, which was absolutely fantastic. And you can see videos on that on our Facebook page, Max on a Mission. Jump on there and you can see him riding his bike. Now, this is a boy that the initial prognosis was that he might not be able to sit up. He's definitely not going to walk. He'll probably have issues talking. No, the issue is getting him to shut up. He's a little chatterbox. And the therapy that we have been doing, we've been extremely happy with. Come in canoe. We got an invitation by one of our therapists that we have spent some time with to come over to Adelaide and try PSM therapy. We were really, really impressed with that as a part of an intensive therapy program. Having PSM before an intensive physical therapy session improved the outcomes of his intensive therapy tenfold. To have that done first, so he had muscles relaxed,
flexibility,
and what Max says, after he had it, he said, I just feel lighter. Being a skeptic myself, I said, right, Canoe, give me a go. I've got really tight calf muscles from the running and therapy and training that I do for myself. So I jumped down the table, Canoe had a look at my calves, and I cannot go to a massage therapist and they can't touch my calves. I will hit the roof. But Canoe did my calf. You did one. After you did one, and I walked around the room, I felt like I'd walk around in circles. I felt like a duck. One wasn't working, and the other one felt so free. I felt like a duck with one leg, So it felt free, and yes, I was sold. And that was just one. That was one session from me, and I watched what Max did over that period of that 5 days, with PSM first, and then intensive therapy after it. It improved tenfold. I can't wait until we've got that in Melbourne. This COVID-19 stuff has just got to disappear. We need
you back.
We want to raise some funds to come, so you can come over here and train some therapists in this therapy. We want this therapy here because incorporated with a physical therapy program and PSM first, I reckon we're going to see some huge results with some of these kids that we've got over here. We've advocated for a lot of kids. We've run the trials. Just give me 2 seconds. Someone knocking on the door. We want to bring that in here to Victoria. We want. We've advocated for a lot of kids. We've arranged that 250 hours of therapy is the normal down here. We want now Piaston to be put on that block. Obviously, like I said before, we don't advocate for one therapy. The kids are all different. Every kid's different. Every kid's needs are different, and their therapies are going to be different. But I think we do need to understand, I think, is one, the therapy is important. Two, the dosage has got to be right. There's a bunch of therapies out there. There's a whole range of therapies. Some therapies have probably been awesome therapies, but they haven't worked out right because the dosage isn't right. And thirdly, the connection between the therapist and the patient. So you get that perfect triangle, the therapy, the dosage, and the connection from the patient with the patient therapy relationship. We've been extremely lucky down here with our therapist, who's become our long-term close personal friend from Bright Start Therapy. And her engagement with Max, and her team is engagement with Max. Her therapy, she's an OT, she's got EPs, and she's got physios, and they all work within her centre. And each one of them are they've modelled pretty much off Zoe, and they connect very well with Max, and I've seen the way they do it with all those other kids. And the therapy dosage is right. So I guess what I'm saying is, as a parent, from diagnosis to now understanding therapies and seeing the connection between the therapist and obviously the results afterwards. We're extremely happy that we've got that connection right, and now we can get that funded by the government. So I look forward to getting you back over here, Canoe, and teaching some of our therapists down here Piaston, so we can incorporate that within our therapy programs.